Here we go. Okay. Chuck, now you're back. All right, cool. How you doing today, Chuck?
I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on today, Reed.
Yeah, absolutely. Are you still in Florida?
I am. I'm April 23rd. I climb in the truck for 63 hours of nonstop fun. Get back to Seattle.
I like, I always forget how far away Florida is. Are you all the way down in the Keys?
As far away from Seattle as I possibly get in the
Okay, so
continental U.S.
you're
That's right.
about. I was going to say you're about one of the furthest distances you can drive and still be in the contiguous U.S., right?
3,500 miles. Yes, that's right.
Okay. Well, then I guess it's midday for you there, morning here. Definitely envious of probably the amount of sun that you're getting and ample amounts of fishing, I'll assume.
Yeah, absolutely.
Can you as a quick curiosity, do they have marlin down there?
They do. It's not nearly as prevalent. As you know, I used to live in Australia, and marlin was actually one of our
Yep.
target species. Where I live, 3 minutes away, is actually some of the best tarpon fishing in the world. So they get
Okay.
almost as big as marlin, and they shame marlin in that they're much better fighters. So I don't want to diss marlin fishermen, but tarpon really do fight well. So tarpon is what I've been targeting.
Okay. I was asking because I was actually down in last year in Cabo San Lucas,
Hmm.
and one of the things you can do is you go out with a charter boat and they'll let you fish marlin for a day, and oh man, like just finding one of those decent size, like okay, it's like yeah, this is actually a lot of work to continue, and the effort and the skill that goes into knowing that the reeling and all that, like you might be doing that for 20-25 minutes with a single fish sometimes, and yeah, but by the end of that, my forearms and my hands were like they were so tired. Like okay, I have new respect for people who catch like 5 or 6 of these a day, because that's a lot of effort, but we caught it and we took it back, and one of the restaurants that basically just dices it up for you and cooks it 12 different ways. That was probably one of the best meals I've ever had. Like it was such amazing fish. It's a
That's
yeah.
that's yeah. That's what nice thing about Florida is they're actually very ecologically or environmentally sound. So all the tarpon fishing are all catch and release. It is actually not legal to keep any of the fish that you catch.
Okay.
So yeah, it's kind of nice. You know that the fish that you're catching today, you'll be catching tomorrow and the next day and the next day. They're just worth a lot more for tourism and the visitors than it is to actually take it back to a restaurant. So
Oh, interesting. I would have thought it might have been something related to just I guess overfishing, but I guess it's for the fact that the tourism comes from just catching them, so that's why they keep them out
it,
there.
it's both. It's both.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Fun digression, but
for
for
your
people,
for your
yeah.
viewers who may not know, my degree
Yeah.
is actually in marine biology. I know Reed knows
Yeah.
this, but yeah, I am a marine biologist by education. So, anyways, yeah,
And I think by hobby and passion, just somebody who likes to connect and socialize with people. Certainly, like you have an
yeah,
ability, and I've even heard people. I've heard other MVPs like you, where they met you once, like 5 years ago, and then 5 years later, they will have walked by a hallway, and you'll turn to them and like, oh hey Mark, and it's like how did he remember my voice? We passed each other for 5 seconds once, like half a decade ago, and you still managed to like remember them. And I've heard that from a few people that it's you have an amazing recollection for names and faces.
So I'll tell you a little bit of a secret. I don't actually, as it turns out. But one thing I actually pride myself in is being literate. And during those events that people think I remember their names, almost always they're wearing name tags. Exactly right. They're wearing name tags. So I
That's
am
fair.
literate. Yeah, yeah. But I do connect with people well, and I do pride myself on that. My memory is no better than anybody else's. I used to work with an MVP named Steve Borg, and he will walk into a conference room and build actually by introducing himself and re-identify about a third of the audience right off the bat, and we're talking 500 or 600 people audience.
Okay,
So
that's
I don't
impressive.
have that sort of skill set. So Steve
That
Borg, if you're listening, I'm in awe of you.
for background a little bit, for the people tuning in, Chuck is somebody that I've known for quite a few years now. He used to be kind of the I never knew your official title as much as I just knew you were very much helping to kind of run and to organize and support the MVP community within Power BI. Now kind of basically moved over to Power Apps, but Chuck was actually the one three years ago who originally nominated me. I remember sitting in a room with you one day for a live stream, and all of a sudden you kind of like pause and just look like you're in thought, and hey, I'm going to nominate you. And it was just like you said it so casually and out of the blue, and I'm just like, wait, what? And yeah, you put my nomination in. Took I think like 14 months or something ridiculous like that, but it
Yeah.
eventually
So
happened.
Yeah. So while there may not have been a lot of a due diligence in the initial nominations, we do actually go out and vet people, look at it, making sure
Hmm.
that they're the top contributors. And Reed is clearly that. He's actually proven himself again and again since that nomination. And it may not have been off the cuff as much as is what you're giving, but we certainly went out and, as you suggested, we did do due diligence in vetting it.
Yep.
So yeah, I do MVP nominations every week. So this week I've probably already done two.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, I
Yeah.
love to see the community continuously grow. And I mean, even from the Microsoft side, like, it's more people to provide feedback on the products, which is, I think, one of the most invaluable assets from my end, is to be able to see changes that are happening before they come out, and also to help contribute towards the direction that they might have, and provide, some counter options or counter opinions occasionally for certain features that may or may not work from a like developer perspectives. But I know today we're going to be talking a lot about kind of like Power Platform and Power Apps. But is there, for the people who might not be too familiar with you in the chat, we know now that you're a marine biologist, but what would be like a good summary to describe kind of like what you do and who you are?
Coming on 30 years at Microsoft, and I started out as a support engineer. So if you've ever called in and asked people for help, way back in the day, it used to be by blue badges that were in on the Redmond campus, and that was what I did. I actually did that for Windows, Excel, and I actually kind of trained myself in the developer tools. So I actually spent a lot of time on Visual Studio and the .NET Framework as a program manager. Reed was saying he didn't know my title. There are kind of three major titles at Microsoft. Three. I need to hold up three fingers. There are product managers. They own businesses and business interactions. So our marketing people would be product managers. And there are the developers, and those are software engineers, right? So those are our developers. And then the other catch-all phrase, who is everybody that does janitorial to raking the leaves to owning a website. And those are called program managers. And that's what my title is, which is ironic because I don't program anymore and I don't manage, but I am a program manager. And that's the other catch-all phrase. And that's what I'm doing now. And what I owned when Reed met me were all the feedback channels and community channels. So if you've ever gone to community.powerbi.com or ideas.powerbi.com, or insert your favorite handle here, or the blog. I actually
Hmm.
managed the blog at that point. I own those. And I certainly taught myself Power BI, and I worked on features with some of the amazing program managers like Will Thompson and Kim Monis, and at that point, who else? Uh, Amanda Kofsky, who's now back. So
Oh
I
yeah.
got to work with I got to work with all those people, and in that world, I wanted to be able to actually go out and edit the data. So my background is, like I said, Visual Studio and the .NET Framework. So having just viewports into the data was cool, and I've done lots and lots of webcasts on how to actually optimize that experience. But I actually taught myself Power Apps and Flow to actually reach through my reports and actually touch the data and update the data. And that journey actually brought me to my current stage where I'm at now. Is I'm on the Power Apps team, and I own those same channels as I did for Power BI. So if you've ever gone to ideas.powerapps.com or community.powerapps.com or the blog, I manage all of those interactions. And as Reed said, primarily as feedback channels.
I still never get how you find enough time in the day to manage to both learn the platform that you're working on, and also manage the like I'm learning the tool just full time, and having basically a second full time job on top of that. That's one of the things that I'd say between the two people that I know, it's you and Marco, who, like, do they actually ever sleep? They seem to be doing so many things constantly and replying to emails. Like, when is their downtime?
I'm lucky in that I get to rely on you. And when I say you, I'm saying the generic sense. So, I spend a lot of time with Mike Carlo and Seth Bauer and Paul Turley. So I actually don't have to learn it from the ground. I can actually get the Cliff Notes version and get it spoon fed to me, and go out and distill it back into presentations and then redeliver it with other MVPs. So I'd like to think I'm actually kind of an eHarmony of the technology. So take it from the SMEs who actually worked on the features with our product managers and program managers, and then actually just make sure it's diversed out. Or actually, as you know, one of the things I work on is a lot of training content, making
Mhm.
sure that there are redeliverable assets that enable you to succeed actually going out and learning it and redelivering it at your user groups. Because that's another place that we interacted, was actually we did a lot of user group stuff together, and we
Yep.
did a lot of like formal training at those user groups. So There you
Oh
go.
yeah, and yeah, you pretty much built out. I think dashboard and data. I know you had a lot of hands in. Wasn't I thought one of the in a day things you kind of almost fully built yourself at a time, wasn't it?
So yeah, the dashboard in a day was actually written by Siva in the first incarnation, and it
Hmm.
was actually before we had any of the styling or any of the buttons. So I actually rewrote it from the ground up. When I actually took a run at it, it was actually at 200 pages, and I brought it back down to 97. Um, and then at that same point, I actually did release the visualizations in a day and the modeling and the shaping. Those are actually all training assets that I actually then did help create or created myself. One of them, like the admin in a day, Adam Saxton was actually one of
Hmm.
the big creators of a lot of it, and I actually just took it and actually formalized as training. So kudos to Adam Saxton. If you guys don't know Adam Saxton, please do check out his YouTube channel as well, Guy in a
Yeah.
Cube.
He's the goalpost I continuously aim my YouTube channel towards when it comes to production quality or sheer number of subscribers.
Yeah.
But I just wanted to mention a couple of people, or Chewy said he had recently listened to your episode on the Raw Data podcast with Rob Collin. Really enjoyed that one. So
That was a lot of fun connecting with Rob. Matter of fact, he pinged me in Twitter. I actually thought it was you. Your guys' Twitter handles are quite similar. So I apologize to Rob or you or whoever needs the apology. But yeah, that was a lot of fun actually connecting with Rob. Rob is one of those people that we had all of these common intersections. I used to support Excel. So we had all of these data points where we were in the same building, we were in the same conference, never met each other until the data summit. That was my first intersection with Rob Colley.
yeah, I mean, and obviously, like he was one of the companies that I used to work for, Power Pivot Pro, before I branched off and started to do my own thing. So my humble beginnings of blogging started at Power Pivot Pro way back in the day too. All right, I have one interesting question from the chat that I'll throw up to here, because but it also is one of those that I'm sure could potentially be a rabbit hole. So let's see if we can answer it, but also not digress too much on it. But I think it's a really good one. So it's what's the story behind renaming Flow as Power Automate, and why are they still called flows rather than Power Automations?
Oh, okay. So the there's a couple. So what happened is that we wanted actually to go out and align itself with the rest of the Power family. So it was called Microsoft Flow. It wasn't called Power anything. And unfortunately, the natural progression would be Power Flow, right? That just kind of makes sense. We did some usability studies. I didn't. I'm not on the marketing team. And the usability studies said that Power Flow just did not resonate at all. So his alignment with the rest of the Power Platform family is what the rename was. And the flows are actually the things that you create, is why they're still called flows. They're not called automations. So, anyways, now that's tradition in history. Thanks for the
Uh,
questions, James.
yeah, absolutely. I'm gonna take that back off. There you go. Yeah, I think that was the only question at the moment. But otherwise, like there's some pretty cool stuff in terms of the integration that I know we're going to go over. If you're ready to switch over, and I can switch screens, so we can start the demo.
Yeah, let me know if you can actually when you can see my screen and I can get started.
Yep, I can see it.
Perfect.
Oh,
Yeah.
look at
Okay.
yeah,
Great.
you got the. I just honestly just want to point out the awesome feature that comes with doing the presentations where it does the live transcribing. I have a quick question for you. That's Microsoft supported by Cortana. It's built into PowerPoint. Is there any way to have that turned on for like on a Windows setting? Like if I'm just showing Power BI Desktop, I'd love just to have a bar at the bottom that's transcribing me. And but it seems to only be when you're in presentation mode in PowerPoint. But I'd love just a system way to have that, because YouTube Live does not transcribe when you do low latency. So I've not found a way to turn that on for some people who have English as a second language. But as a
Yeah,
streamer, that would be lovely.
And Google says that over 1,000 subscribers that it will do real time, but it doesn't. And I've actually found that as well. There's a Lewis SDK from Azure that you could look into, actually see if you can get that turned on. But as far
Okay.
as a low code solution, there isn't. It's actually a full
Mm.
blown high code, as it's referred to in our world, that you'd actually have to use the Azure SDKs for. And I haven't actually taken a run at it. So
Okay. I
yeah,
bet.
I'll defer to the Azure team on the answer to that one.
I also just was, as one's last point to that is in vMix, at least you can layer on videos. I'm wondering if I actually do put my presentation mode basically on a second monitor, have my main monitor as the one being cast, and basically screen grab the lower section, overlay it on top of my regular one. It still might capture the audio that way. So actually, that just gave me an idea to try later.
That would, yeah, that should work. Having basically your PowerPoint be the transcription, that would work.
Yep, and
Okay.
I would just grab this part of the video and then basically feed it on top of another video feed.
Yeah, that should work. There should be no reason why you couldn't do it that way, just using Z ordering and layering.
Cool.
Okay, to the presentation. So as I mentioned earlier, I used to be in the Power BI team, and I wanted to actually go out and solve things that was not native to Power BI. And what the list you're looking at today is not just my list, but I'm on the internal Microsoft user group, actually run by the worldwide communities, and our field is on it. There's 6,000 people in our internal user group. And these are some of the questions they asked. And I know the answer because I know the history and how we built it and the APIs that we built it on, because I used to teach Developer in a Day. It's another one of the courses I actually helped develop with Peter Myers. So knowing the APIs, I know the limitations of what it can do, but the people who are actually looking at the descriptions don't know that. So let's go ahead and go through what some of these are, what their limitations, and what they look like in real time. So right off the bat, if I can advance my slide, there we go. Come on, there we go. Okay, so we actually had one of our field people, his customer says, hey, I have this Power BI report, and I want to go out and add data to it. And I see that inside of Flow, or Power Automate, my Flow, there is this action called Add Rows to Dataset. Right? That seems like it's the one that this person needs. So they went out and said, hey, when I go out and use this action in my Flow, I don't see my dataset. Right? So I have a dataset. In this example, I have one called Scorecard. Why do I not see the one for my billing? And what's this table thing? What's the table name versus the data set? Why do I only ever see real time if I actually only see a data set at all? Do you know what the answer is, Reed? So this is actually audience participation, and you are the audience. Actually, no, people can, like James could actually ask. And it's interesting that we recently renamed this action. It used to have a much better name. To me, it was better because it was actually a lot clearer as to what its limitation was or what it actually could do. So the word data set here is kind of overloaded a little bit. And there's actually two.
Yeah, because it's not loading into a tabular model, certainly.
It's not. And then what Reed is talking about is there are two different types of data sets in Power BI. There is the one that is actually created by the M mashup language. When I go out into Power BI and I do get data, underneath of the covers, it's actually creating a bunch of M language to go out and query that underlying data source, and we bring it back in. There is a whole nother type of data sets that most people don't use. I looked at the telemetry, and these data sets are typically a developer feature. And so what are they called? Reed, how do you access them, and where do you use them, and what do they look like? You should know this. We have played with them together. So what are these other type of data? What are these other type of data? What are the other type of data sets called? So there's the ones that get data and they're actually brought up through the M language, and there's these other type of data sets.
Well, there's also there's the live connected data sets where you're simply just connecting to a model that already exists. It's basically, honestly, the three primary types. There's import, live, and then direct query. And between
so Reed is right, and there's actually 4 in that world, and those 3 that he just mentioned are all defined by an M query or an M connection, and they actually go back in through our XMLA endpoint. That's how you get to those. And there's a fourth one that it doesn't do.
Composite.
And that's actually the streaming data set, REST-based.
Oh yeah,
API.
Not in Power BI desktop, but in the service, yes.
Yeah. So you're right. In Power BI desktop, you can access that. But then there's an M connection back into the service. So he's absolutely right. It's only for the service that you get these streaming data sets or real time, or actually the right way of referring to them is we refer to Marco Russo, because Marco Russo uses these all the time, are REST based or API based, because some of them aren't streaming and there's hybrid. So that's what this card is. When you actually go out and take a look at Power Automate and you take a look at this where it says add rows of data set, it's not talking about import. It's not talking about direct query, and it's not talking about live connect. It is talking about REST-based. And the way you get to a REST-based or a streaming data set is, let's show you one of these in action. Let's actually go out and see if, here, I got one right here. Okay, so Reed has done an amazing job, and we're going to go ahead and give him a 20, right? So, and it's not a negative.
Oh, I was going to say, man, I did absolutely terrible. There you go.
We're going to give you a positive 20. And what we'll see is that we have a lightning bolt right here, and you'll see that the last one that came in should be 20, and we're going to wait for a second for that. Maybe a second. It's kind of interesting is that this tile is actually based on direct query. This is based on direct query, and this is actually a streaming tile on the dashboard. And you'll see that in this case, it's actually kind of late or not working all that well. We'll see if we can give it again. We'll actually give me a value. But I don't know if you noticed this while we went through and actually gave myself the score. It did it in quote real time, right? So let's go out and give Chuck a score and see if we can actually get that score that says something other than negative 40, because we know that that's not what I give. So what we expect to see is the last score that was entered is show up underneath of this streaming tile, because that was always show you the redisk cache or the last enter. We're just not going to get that. So we're going to wait for us again. And this kind of score went up, and the average of the score went in the correct direction. So it's working except for that one. Let's actually do one more refresh, and we'll see if we can't just kick the tires. It may be that I opened the dashboard. Read how long ago we started this call? About an hour ago? 40 minutes ago? There we go.
Yeah, roughly. Yeah.
So just by doing a refresh back into it, it looks like I had a stale connection. I now have that 10. So now if we go out and give Reed let's give him a 2, because it's actually going to add it. I think is actually what I've done here is I've given him the average, or no, the addition. So Reed is now, he now has 22, and the last score comes in. So this is a real-time streaming data set, and there is actually a flow underneath the covers that goes out and uses, per this slide, that action. And the reason I actually brought this up, and we actually had this long conversation on it, is because the person at Microsoft, right, this is a Power BI person, didn't know that there are these different types of data sets, and you cannot go out and use the ones that are actually created by the M mashup language, i.e. direct query import or live connect. You can't use this action to get data into that. But that's actually what most people want. That's what I wanted back when I was in the Power BI team. I wanted to actually do annotation, right? So I wanted to actually find a row and annotate it and say, hey, Reed needs to update this, and maybe send him email. So annotate it and send an email. How do you do that? What's that look like? I already told you that this is actually using a flow. And if you want, I'm happy to show us how, if we've got time, how to create this. It doesn't take a long time to create that application. I've got classes on it, and I can actually show you where the training module is that has every step. We can look at that. But I did want to go on to the next one. So if I go back into my workspace, I actually have a Dataverse report. Dataverse, if you're not familiar with the term, is actually the underlying data source for all of our Dynamics products. And it used to be called XRM, and then it was called Common Data Service, and now is recently renamed to Dataverse. And until recently, you could not do direct query. You could not do direct query to a common data service, now called Dataverse, or any of the Dynamics backends. Now you can. So you can go out and create a direct query report to these interactions. And this is actually what we're looking at, is a direct query. So if I go out and click on edit, you can actually see that, well, to you, it looks like a bunch of columns, but underneath the covers, it is actually direct query. And I can show you in the Power BI desktop where I brought it in. But what I wanted to do is actually show you what most people are wanting to do, which is actually go out and add values into a get data. And this actually should work for most of your get data, but there's going to be a bunch of considerations. So if I go out and say, okay, this is supposed to be a computer ordering system. So I've thought my computers have car names. What's your favorite car, Reed? We'll actually give it that one.
Oh, let's just aim high and say a Lamborghini.
Lambo. We'll just make it easy for me.
There you go.
and we're going to go out and read at havens.com. I don't know if that's you, but we're going to send email to that person anyways.
Cool.
And we're going to say that if anybody's going to create Acer made a Ferrari for a while, but if anybody's going to make it, it'd be actually, I think there is a Lamborghini. Anyways, it doesn't matter. And the price, the Lambo one's clearly going to be expensive. It's going to be $3,000. Okay, so $3,000. And now if I go out and hit my little save this, you're actually going to see that there is, you can actually, it's really subtle, but there was actually a refresh going on because this is a direct query, and I told the visuals, but there's now my Lambo, and it's now 3,000. And this metaphor, the way I did this, I'm going to show you how to do it. It'll only take us a couple minutes. Should work for most of your backends, but there's lots of caveats. And we're going to talk about those when I'm done. So let's go ahead and create this one from scratch and show you how it's done, because that's what most people want. So if I go out and go to Dataverse to do, it should look like the same report, but with a big empty spot. I'm going to go out and click on Edit. And I'm going to go out and click on this Power Apps visual. And I really, really like what the team's done here, where there's guidance on how to use the visual. And I hope that that's actually something that the Power BI team does for the rest of their visual, and they actually make it a suggestion for their custom visuals, because I really like what we've done here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my orders, and I'm going to drag in the email address and the manufacturer name and the price, and you get the idea. And what this does is it brings over the data set from Power BI and ships it over to my Power Apps, and it does it in pages of like 5,000 rows. So you can actually page through it as well. I want to take it from the environment of Microsoft default to my environment that I've been actually writing the stuff in. And it's called Chuck's World. There we go. And we're going to go out and create a brand new Power App. So if you guys have never created Power Apps, because this is a Power BI channel, welcome to the Power Apps world. And you're going to see that, what time is it? It's 12:28 my time. We're going to see how long does it take Chuck to write a Power App with read and slow timings. It looks like I have a slow internet, probably a dial-up. You remember dial-up where you could almost hear it go?
Oh, I had 28 point. I think it was 28.6, 28.8. Not in the 56K ones. I had that once before that. You had to wait 30 minutes for pictures to load from the top to the bottom.
There you go. So you can actually see that these are actually those values that were put in. We just put in that 3,000. If you go out and take a look at manufacturer, it says Acer. So this is actually literally is getting pumped in from Power BI. And if I'd actually had a filter context, I would only see those records sent to Power Apps that actually applied to that filter context. And it's unidirectional, meaning that the filter context only flows one way. If I actually go out and put a filter on this, it does not push it back to Power BI. So it's something that you guys need to think about as architect.
And you might have just lost Chuck there again. Oh, no, here we go. Okay, you froze for just a second. I did, yeah, your back switch is great. I have a good question from Kendall. So if you can add records to a data set, can you also update records too? I know for almost any data set you can, but I'll let you obviously elaborate.
Absolutely, Kendall. And that's actually the first app I ever wrote, was modifying those records in there. And but yes, this one actually can go out and do edit or add, and you'll actually see that I'm going to do a submit new, but I could have actually just done edit as well. But great question, and the answer is yes. Thank you, Kendall, for that question. Okay, perfect. So if you missed it, there was a gallery here that I actually showed you, and gallery is a read-only view. What I want to do is actually edit or update those records, as Kendall was just talking about. So what I did was I went to forms, and I went out and chose an edit form, and what we need to do is actually say what data set are we using. Now, I already told you that report is using the common data, I almost said the common data service, but it's actually using Dataverse, and it's actually using a table called orders, right? So I now bound this control to the same data source as what this is using. And now it's saying, hey, what fields do you want in there? Name is a good one. Created neon is probably not one that I want, but we want those other ones that we're seeing elsewhere. So email address, I think, is we're actually seeing elsewhere. I certainly want price And what was the other one? Manufacturer name? Maybe it's just manufacturer. I thought it was actually manufacturer name. I think actually I rewrote it is what the thing is. Okay. So at this point, this is actually in a empty state or a null state, ready to add data. If I run it, you'll actually see that it doesn't even show up. Yeah. So what we need to do is say, hey, I'm ready for you to add a record, and I want you to save the record. So what we're going to do is, usually I use buttons. We're going to go ahead and use an icon. Emmer Cooper has actually done some great blog posts on how to use icons so you can spin them and animate them and all kinds of fun stuff. So I've been playing with icons. They're very intuitive versus a button as well, right? So in this one, I'm going to go out and say, hey, I want a new form or a new row, if you will. And in this case, there's only one form. When I highlighted or I selected it, it actually highlighted the form on my edit experience. I don't know if you can see that through the stream, but there is a green box on it.
Yep.
Okay, so Reed is giving me the audio or audible affirmation. So that means he can see it. That's good. Okay, and now I've got a new record or a new row for my record. What I want to do is actually save that. So and save it's called submit. And once again, by the way, don't do like I do and actually use default names. Please rename your controls to meaningful things. That way you can actually figure out what they do later. Now, the other secret thing that you need to do here is that this is actually going to push a row underneath of the covers into the data set. Or in the case of what Kendall was talking about, it would have edited. But this Power BI report isn't going to know about that edit. Now, a year ago, Power BI Desktop added the option for direct query reports where you can actually do a poll where you can go out at a time and say, I want you to do a refresh every N number of minutes.
Yep.
That's certainly one way of doing it, but we're going to show you a better way. So right now, by default, unless you set that, Power BI reports are static, right? They don't know about direct query reports being updated or direct query data sets being updated. They're static. Unless you change it to where you pull, and pull's not a great solution. I'm going to show you a better way. So
and I will say there's one clever technique that I've seen Parker Stevens employ a couple of times where using the custom visual that is that plays through values in a column, you can basically turn that into a auto refresh every like 30 seconds, where basically it's playing through a disconnected table, but you can use that to trigger polls in the report where it normally would not know how to do that automatically. So it's a very clever use case of that.
If you haven't used the Play Axis custom visual, it is one that you should certainly go out and add to your toolkit. It does crazy, amazing things. So yes, Play Axis is the custom visual we're talking about. In this case, rather than actually going out and doing every 30 seconds or having it rotate or whatever or pull, I'm going to go out and say when I click on it, I'm not going to bother doing a refresh until I want it to see new data. And that's actually what this line of code's doing. And that actually tells direct query in this report to go out and refresh the visuals, right? So the data set's updated, but the visuals need to be updated. So let's go ahead and save this. We'll call this one the Havens app. He's got this bluey background, so we're actually going to save it as bluish. And if I go back over here, where it was empty, what we should see in a second is my Havens app show up by virtue of just saving. That's all I needed to do. And there's Havens. And if I go out and click this plus button, and clearly I'm going to get the Lambo 5000. Yes, right? Because I'm going to get one better than Reeves. And I'm going to send this.
You should have gone for 9001. It could have been over 9,000.
There you go. The price, mine's even cheaper, so I'm going to make it $2,600. And I think I made it Acer. Let's stay consistent to Acer. Okay, so now when I save this, you'll notice there isn't a Lambo 5000S. There isn't anything in the $2,600 range, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, so we're going to wait for that. And actually, if you look right here, it should be doing the refresh. Oh, it actually was really fast. I missed it, but there it is. So this lets you go back out and push it back into basically anything, right? I could have made this application, this application, push it to SQL, push it to Excel, push it to anything. Where this works very elegantly, and I can do that Power BI integration refresh, because remember I told you this is a visual refresh, is because it's direct query. All right, let's talk about maybe Kendall's scenario where let's just say Kendall is using a on-premise SQL server, and he goes out and says, hey, I want you to do this Power BI integration refresh. What is that going to do? What do you think it's going to do, Reed? If I go out and issue that Power BI refresh, and he's got an on-premise SQL server as his data source. So on-premise is the key there.
I mean, well, at a minimum, I would assume you'd need to have a gateway for it to even to be able to get through to tunnel in. So without that, there's no way for basically cloud to connect to physical prem.
That's right. So you have, how many gateway refreshes do you have in a shared in a shared environment, Reed?
I know there's a limit. I don't actually know the number for the limit. There you go. Oh, it's only really?
It's eight. It's 8 or 9. I think it's
Okay.
8. So it's 8, and that's how many refreshes you get in a shared environment, and then it's 48 in the UI in a premium capacity. So if you have a premium capacity and you want to go out and you can schedule up to 48 refreshes.
Yeah, you mean the number of scheduled refreshes you can put onto a data set in the there you go. Thank you. Yeah. It's not a ton, but it's also a lot more than like most people don't even need 8 a day. It's normally like once a day for most clients.
But in this scenario, we just added a new row, and now I'm taking a look at a real connection or a live connection from Power Apps versus a 8 a day update. So what you need to do in that case is you actually need to not just tell your application or your report to do a visual refresh. You need to go out and tell the gateway, I want you to do a data set refresh. Yeah. And I have a slide on that in a second. And Power Automate just introduced the idea of actually doing a data set refresh. I don't think I actually have a blog post on it, but Daniel Christian does a great video on that. And he actually shows you how to actually go out and then string in this case, it would look like, Power BI data set refresh. And this is just pseudocode. But so you're issuing a refresh to the visual, and you're issuing a refresh to the data set.
Here's a great question on this topic, by the way. So as you've mentioned, scheduled refreshes have a limit of 8. But if you're commanding it from something else via API, because it's almost like a manual refresh. Can you circumvent and basically go beyond the 8 if something else is triggering it besides the menu in the service?
So let me answer with the correct, or with what the team wants me to answer, is that the 48 refreshes in a premium capacity is a UI constraint. What is that? Once every half hour or something, and it's actually at a certain time. That one you can certainly go out and say, I want it to be on demand or actually at the amount of time. Now, with large data sets, you're probably not going to get them to refresh any faster through the gateway than every half hour. And if you issue them, they're just going to queue up and they're going to hurt yourself in terms of performance. So you'd probably even want to write the code, do I have one pending? In which case, don't initiate another one. But I actually did write a blog post back before Phil Seamark joined Microsoft. Blog post back then on how to actually do that from, in that case, it was PowerShell. But he wanted to actually go out and initiate one through the API. And the answer is yes, you can do more than the 48, or you can actually do them at different times than the 48. And you notice I kind of avoided the shared one. So I'll let you guys play with that. So
and in general too, I was just going to say, if you are needing to refresh more than every 30 minutes, at some point, maybe just consider building a model and having a live connection against it, or some other methods rather than refreshing an import model 50 plus times a day at that point.
Or in Phil's case, it was a situation where he wanted to do it at a specific time. He didn't need to do it every 30 minutes or every 48 seconds or whatever the case is. But if he actually had this big, long process that took 12 hours, he didn't want his refresh to start 30 minutes before it ended, in which case it was a waste. So he needed to kick off after this big, long process. And again, his process literally did take 12 hours. And he didn't want the refresh to start 5 hours later, and he didn't want to start 12 minutes or 12 seconds before that ended.
Yep.
He needed it to actually initiate before. So there is actually use cases to where you want it on demand. Actually, the one that we just showed just a second ago is a great use case. You're probably not adding thousands of records every 12 nanoseconds. You may be adding one record a day, in which case you want to actually refresh the data set at that time.
Exactly.
So this is a way of actually maybe more wisely using the resources rather than actually more proactively. Okay, so I've actually already told you the answer, but I'm still going to go out and show this to you. So actually, this is actually the flow action for issuing a refresh to a data set, right? That's on the left. And what I showed you on the right is how to issue a refresh to the visuals. And I've done a slide here to show you that there are UI components in Power BI for both of those. If I go into my dataset view, you'll see that there's a refresh button. You can actually go out and hit that on your dataset, and that issues a dataset refresh. If I'm in a report, there is a refresh button that doesn't update the dataset, it updates the visuals. And these are different paradigms using the exact same word. So we've overloaded the word, and I wanted to make sure people realize that in Kendall's scenario, there are things to think about. What steps do I need to go through to actually look at updated data if I'm updating it real time in my Power Apps? That's the biggest architectural consideration. If I push live data through, do people expect to see it live? And there's different ways of breaking it up or giving experiences to set expectations, but it's something to think about when you start doing this. Okay, so that was a long diatribe on a topic that most of you guys may not be interested in. I apologize if that's the case. All right, that takes me to my next topic, which is something that we actually had back with a gentleman by the name of, God, what was it? Sunny? I think it was Sunny, actually. One of the PMs on the Power BI team, and he's left quite a while ago. Did a great blog post on if you've got a tile that has an alert on it on a dashboard, right? So you can only have alerts on tiles on dashboards. I can go out and initiate a flow if I pass a threshold. So, Reed, do you remember which 3 controls you can actually have alerts on in a dashboard? And why is there only 3? Do you remember what they are?
Do you mean like 3?
You know I was gonna...
3? Yeah. So do you mean by what 3 visual support alerts?
Yes, exactly right. Yes.
I know single value card is the first.
And he actually told you right there in his words, he actually told you what the other 2 were and why it's important. Single value card, single value, because an alert is the value itself, the value. And so you wouldn't have it for a table, right? Or it'd be the sum. So the other one's a tachometer and the other one is the KPI, I think is something like that. Yep. And all of 3 of those have single values. And what you could do is based on a single value being above or below a threshold, I can initiate a mail or I can initiate a flow. What's the use case for that? And it's pretty common is that maybe if I pass a threshold, I want to get alerted. Maybe if I'm way past a threshold, which Power BI doesn't have this idea of, I want to not just send me email. I want to send me and Reed email. And if I go way, way, way past it, I probably want to go out and let me, Reed, and Rob Colley know, right? So we can go out and scope it. And maybe actually tell us through different channels. And the first one is email, second one is SMS, next one is a fire alarm. I don't know. But that's how, and this has actually been around for 2 years, I think. Reed, I remember you actually used to demo this, but it's been around for a while, maybe 3.
At least 2, I think.
Yeah. And so this is actually, and I've got steps for that. If you guys want to know the steps, actually, I'll put the link in there, or I'll redo that in a second, the steps on how to create this. So what are we announcing, or what am I showing you as far as what are we introducing and how are we making this better, right? So we can already go out and trigger a flow from Power Automate based on alert, and we can actually go out and edit data with a Power App and going out and add data. What's missing? Well, what's missing is, let's go out and take a look at that demo that I was just walking through a second ago. this is a great example. Let's say that these are my orders. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 orders. And what's happened is as always happens, it's going to be ahead of schedule and it's going to be lower price because that's how it always works, right, Reed?
Of
Everything gets
course,
cheaper
yeah.
and it always gets.
And
And
everything
I
is a
want
star. All models in reality are star schemas. There's no snowflakes.
to, and I want to email all these people that did this. Now, with a Power App, what are you going to do? Is you're actually going to pump in this data set, and when you hit this checkbox, all you're going to do is push that data set back into a flow. So the Power App actually literally really isn't doing anything other than actually being a front into a flow. So what Sujata and Arnav and Harish has done on the team, I wish I could take credit for it, but they've actually done an amazing job, is gone out and enabled you to pump the data directly into a flow so I can actually email all those people, right? So let's take a look at that. And this is actually something that's coming and something that it's in the release notes and it's actually linked in that PowerPoint that I just gave Reed and I actually showed a second ago. So let's go ahead and go into my Power Automate tab. And let's pretend that this one wasn't there. Let's say that I didn't have that there, and we're going to remove that. But we should actually have a table. Oh, the table's refreshing. So here's a table, and I want to email Reed Havens and Charles William and Chaz and Chaz and Chaz. So what we're going to do is I'm going to add this visual. By the way, this visual right now, I actually did from Get More Visuals, and I added it from a file. But you are, when we release it, are going to go ahead and say Get More Visuals and add it from the App Store. So you're going to go out and see it listed here. And by the way, that play access visual that we were talking about, you can actually access this right here, right now. Since I've already got it, I don't need to do that. I'm going to go ahead and add this. And once again, we've actually taken, remember how I said I really like the design construct of actually giving the documentation how to use it. It's just like Power Apps. It says add your columns that you want to use. And once again, we're going to add email. Come on. Email, there we go. And we're going to add the manufacturer name and we're going to add the price. Okay. So I want to email all these people that their order, oh, what happened to my price? Okay. That they've got a new price and this order, which is actually probably name because I've got manufacturer and I've got name, is going to be ahead of schedule, right? So I want to email all those people in this data set. Now, in this case, it's only 7 rows, and that would be pretty doable, pretty viable for going through a Power Up. But if you had 1,000, it would just make sense just to run it directly from a flow. So here, I'm going to go ahead and go into Edit. And this is actually one of the slickest experiences I've seen in a long time for actually how to use custom visuals. The team's done a beautiful job. So what you see here is hosted inside of Power BI, the Power Automate editing experience. And what we're going to do is we're going to choose a brand new one, just like I did for Power Apps. And again, while you can actually see this Power BI button click, you're not going to see the visual. It's not released yet, so you can see half of the experience, and the team's working on it. I'm hoping it gets released soon, but this you will not find yet. It has not released yet. Sujata and the team and Arnav are working on releasing it right now. So what we say we're going to do is we're going to actually email all those people. So what we're going to do is we're going to say email, probably say send email, make it a little bit easier to find because there's a lot of emails. And this is actually running inside of the Microsoft tenant. So what I'm going to do is use the Outlook one because we actually have data protection policies around that other connector. I couldn't use it. And what we're going to do is go to look at dynamic content. And I'm going to go out and use this one that's called Power BI Data CRDB Email. CRDB, by the way, is my custom entity or that table name. So that's we've actually prefaced that. When I can rename it right here if we needed to.
I love the amount of editing development environments that they're adding inside of a development environment. Like it's I'm pretty sure Exhibit is on the product team because it's like, yo, dog, I've heard you enjoy development, so I added a development environment inside of your development environment.
It's taking people and keeping them in context. And we're actually, the Power Automate folks, Harish is actually the program manager, spent a lot of time on actually enabling these sort of scenarios to where you don't have to think about Power Automate as something separate. You can actually just go out and say, hey, I want to flow here. And in situ, in context, it says, okay, and here's how you create a flow. Now I'm going to do that step again because something really subtly happened that I didn't point out is that we are now in a loop, right? But I didn't create that loop. So I'm going to go ahead and show that one more time because I should have. So I'm going to go ahead and say send email. Now remember, we have 7 rows. Okay. And that's get email. I don't want get email. That's not the one I want. I want to send email. One more time. I'm going to do it a third time apparently. Send email. And there it is. Thank you. Okay.
For the
now,
buttons clicked, can it basically like what's the limit of what types of buttons can be it can identify to be clicked to basically trigger this action?
So this is actually it's not called a flow button. That's what I've been calling it, but it's actually a specialized button specifically for initiating Power Automate. I don't think I can go out and put a button on there and put the action of type flow. I don't think that's actually something that is enabled yet. I haven't checked it, but I don't believe that this is a special button. I know what you're saying is that when you go out and do a button, you can actually have different actions, like one's a bookmark and one's a back.
And it would be nice if there was a way almost for kind of telemetry and just to see how often a certain button gets clicked. Like, wait, I know we have this pop-up for certain details on something, and how often do people inside of this page actually look at that? So if you could somehow get an action in here that records how often people click this specific button, like that was kind of where my mind was going.
I thought that the Power BI team was actually going to surface API or application insights to be able to take a look at did people navigate? Did people click on this refresh? Actually surface it through application insights. Because that would be the right way of doing it. That way I can actually munge that data with all the rest of my application. So hopefully the answer is yes through application insights. And what you can do is just put your API key in there. That's how we've done it for Power Apps. I'd love to go out and say, hey, this is how many times they looked at this form in Power Apps, and this is how many times I looked at this report in Power BI, and actually looking at it as one data set. Okay, so the reason I came back here is because I'm going to go back and do that again. Right now, I'm not in a loop, right? It is going to send it PC email. And if I go out and type in my email address, you can see that this is the entire Microsoft directory.
There you are.
I can send one piece of email to me, right? But I want to send 7 pieces of email, and that means I need to do it in a loop for the entire data set. So what I did is I clicked on Add Dynamic Data Set, and I clicked on that column. Now, right now, I'm going to point out, you can't see my finger, that we're not in a loop. But as soon as I click here, it put it into a loop. So what it's going to do is it's going to walk through every single one of those email addresses, and it actually populated in the 2. And what I'm going to do now is specify is that your order is going to be early. What happened here? That's not what I wanted. Okay. And let's go out and put the order name right here, and new price is, and wait, I'm not seeing the price. I must not have done it. Okay, what we'll do is we'll put in manufacturer name, but you get the idea. This is, if I added it, I should be able to see those. I think I know why. Is that price is a value, and it actually is looking for a text. So I would have to pierce that to bring it back in, I think, because it looks like it is. So I'll have to play with that. That's something that I have not played with yet. And I have actually played with this for quite a bit. So I'm going to go back. And let's call this one the Havens MailChimp-ish. Okay. Chimish. Okay. Now there's an issue in this build. Maybe this is one of the reasons why it hasn't released. Now, when I hit save and I go back to the report, I should see it as a button. Remember when we started this, I said pretend that button doesn't exist? I think, it's still in the edit mode. Now, it should actually go into the button mode. So what we're going to do is what we need to do is apply that flow that we just created to this this report. So we're going to go ahead, and there's my Havens MailChimp-ish without the P. I'm going to select it. I'm going to choose apply. That was fun. Now when I go back, we're going to be in that button mode. And this button, I can go back out and change all these different properties. So the button text could be send email. I could change the text. I could change the alignment, blah, 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 blah. You get the idea. This is just like any other button, except that it is bound to a flow. Now to run it, I go to reading view. That puts us back into a, quote, a production or a run view. And if I send email, did I click that? Okay, there. I hadn't clicked it. I think that overlay actually grabbed my step, and I could go ahead and go back into my flows. We could find the Havens Chimpish, and we can go out and take a look at those flows, and you'll see that it succeeded. And if we go out and take a look at it, you can actually go out and see each run. So we actually had 7 runs. Let's go out and take a look at the run itself. And I think there's actually show raw inputs. So this is actually sending that. This is the Lambo 5000S. If we hit the next one, that one should actually be what? My Porsche 4. Actually, it looks like it's in inverse order. And if I go into my mailbox, I closed my mailbox. Okay. If I go to my mailbox, I now have all those that were sent to me as sent to me. The ones that were sent to Reed and the ones to the Gmail account, you saw there was a Gmail account, those actually give me a failure at the email because that data protection policy at Microsoft doesn't let us actually send email to external people from those actions. So again, for me, I'll actually see failures in my inbox, but you would actually see them in the flow if you had something like a null. So if I hadn't had an email address. So that's actually what we are introducing. That is actually what we're releasing. And what I wanted to show you, Reed, why I reached out to you and actually asked if I could cover or be on your YouTube channel. Hopefully that's useful. There is a little bit more, but I wanted to break, see if you wanted me to continue on and see if there's any questions before we moved on.
Yeah, there's a few that I can field to you, and I'm also like 1 hour is a very loose hour. So if there's something else that you have to show, I'm happy to put it on. But I love the idea of being able to, to create basically a curated set of data and then blast that out as like an email or something else through a button, because it can access the data that's in the perspective that you're basically looking at via whatever kind of propagated filters you have. So it's very useful to be able to to fire that off to something. With the basically the Power Automate. Well, it's a Power Automate platform, but I guess it's still. Would you call it a flow button or a Power Automate button? Because it's activating a flow, right? Like it's still like an ambiguous. Yeah.
I used to be on the marketing team at one point in my dark history, and I used to think a lot about branding. And in this case, logic and branding don't always intersect, and there's both of those could be right. So sure, I'll go with either of those. I think either one's wrong.
A couple questions to field to you. This one, I can personally answer this, and you're welcome to chime in. So James wanted to know if there's a way to make an on-demand incremental refresh that only refreshes part of the model that was changed. Incremental refresh is not set up in the flow. It is set up in Power BI. So if your Power BI dataset has incremental refresh enabled in it, and a flow triggers that model to refresh, then you are triggering the incremental refresh because that's the way the model has been baked in the oven. And you'll have to remind me. So Chuck, can you do a flow action to kick off a data flows refresh? I'm assuming yes.
They're done differently. I'd have to take a look at it. I know I can do that through the API. I don't know.
I don't think that's available yet, but I'm not 100% sure because I don't do it that often.
Let me see if they're in the dropdown because I think they are actually referenced differently. I know the API use is differently as well. So So James, let me owe that to you, and it should be pretty quick for me just to hit the dropdown inside of Power Automate and see if my data flows are visible. If not, the answer is still yes, you could do it, but what you would have to do is actually call the REST API itself from that flow using Power Automate. So it's different, and it's actually what we used to have to do before they actually had this action. So Ida Bergman from Iceland or Finland? One of our fellow MVPs actually has done some blog posts on that.
Finland, I think.
Yeah. Greenland.
Somewhere.
It's, it's a land with a lot of snow. Looking at her pictures, yeah.
Yes.
So check out Ida's blog posts on those, because she's actually, how do you call REST APIs from Power Automate from within Power BI?
I'll drop that in a second, but for now, there's another good question here, and I can partially answer this one. When a record is updated with Power via Power Apps into Power BI, will the updated record also be shown and analyzed in Excel? Yes and no. So if you're doing any kind of like a live data set on a dashboard or anything else and you do an update, it just pops in. But analyzed in Excel polls, it doesn't get pushed as far as I'm aware. So if you click a slicer or something or do anything to update the stuff in analyzed in Excel, the new data will show up, but it's not going to just appear in 3 seconds unless you do any kind of filter manipulation or you reopen the workbook or something like that. Yeah, I believe that, which I think is what the question's alluding to.
Yeah, and that's, yeah, that sounds exactly right. Dashboards are the only things that actually can get signaled, and even then, they don't always. As you saw with the streaming tile, right? We actually showed a streaming tile a second ago that should have been signaled and wasn't. So you may need to issue a visual refresh. Yeah,
exactly. And I think we had one more. This one. It was part of your alerts conversation earlier, but can the trigger for the alert rather than email, can it be set? I'm assuming kind of as a chat in a Teams channel, basically as an auto-generated like bot that just mentions to the channel, by the way, this thing happened.
So if I go back into here and I choose edit, in this case I chose email. If I go out and hit plus here and choose add action, it could be any of these actions. I mean, there's 400 or 500 of these. So email just happens to be one that everybody understands, but positively you can go out and do a data card and go out and do an entry in a Teams session itself, a Teams chat session. Matter of fact, Thomas Pozitek, like as in the rear end on a car, just showed how to do that in the last month's Power Apps community call. So Thomas Pozitek have blog posts on it, and we actually did this in the community call. So again, there's hundreds and hundreds of these different connectors. They just go on and on. Good list, and you can go out and see all of those. It doesn't need to be email. I could go out and post a weather alert, I guess, or pull back the weather if I want to, or put something in a planner. Okay, great question.
Perfect. And that was the questions for now. So yeah, like if you have one last thing to show, we can do that and then wrap up afterwards.
Yeah. So the only other thing I wanted to show is that let's actually just do it here because it's actually pretty easy. Oh, and by the way, it's complaining about my Power BI data refresh because I actually haven't wired it up to the flow. Is that I keep showing how to put a Power App inside of a Power BI report. It turns out if you actually are building Power Apps and you want to have that rich data context, we can actually do the opposite. So I can actually go out and add a tile. And what's interesting is that, let's go out and grab that same workspace I had a second ago. I can wire this tile up into dynamically different workspaces. So what does that mean? Hang on a second. Let's see if I can find the Chaz. Why not say the Chaz one? And use the retail analysis and see if I can find this year's sales. So see, that one's actually got data in it. Okay. So the only thing I wanted to show was the fact that Power BI until recently didn't have a map visual, but Power BI does. So I used the map visual from Power BI in my Power Apps all over the place. And what I could do here is I can go out and add a button that says, I want to show not the view of the entire country, but maybe a different view. So let me show you how you would do that in kind of a caveman way. I have a much better example in a second. And if you haven't played with Power BI Embedded, that's actually kind of what we're looking at here is doing an embed. And I'm going to go out and say, set a variable name. We'll say it's called read to that value. And okay. So now what I can do is say, and rather than having the tile URL be read, I mean this string, I can actually have it be read, but I want it to actually point to 2 different places. And let's go back out here, click here, change the data to a different dashboard. Dataverse, is that one got data in it? We'll find out. Maybe price. Close enough. Okay, so now let me go out and, does this say read? It does. Good. Okay, and go back out and grab this. Control A, Control X, and we'll set this equal to read. Oh, I was going to say it is case sensitive, so I want to make sure I get it right. Okay, and it says I don't know what read is. And that's fine. A lot of people don't know what read is, but we're going to tell it what read is here in a second. Okay, looks like I got 2 H's. I don't have 2 H's. Okay, and this actually gives capabilities to your Power Apps and things that Power BI can't do, which is kind of fun. To mess with people, I used to rewrite Power BI inside of Power Apps to do things that Power Apps can't, or Power BI can't do. In this example, let's run this application. And if I click it here, we should see a map, I think. Right? If I click this button, we should actually see a tile from a different dashboard. Now, why is that interesting? A, I can put Power BI tiles in my Power Apps. That's interesting. B, I can actually have these buttons span across workspaces. So I can actually have an entire Power Apps that have tiles from every workspace environment. And that's not something that you can do in Power BI. I can't go out and create a dashboard with visuals from outside of my environment. You can come live. And what I can do is I can even do something that people have been asking for a long time inside their dashboard. I can set filter context on there. So I promised to actually show you how to do the training on this, or all the steps. What was it? Oh, the alerts. So if you want to know where to find out how to do the alerts, you go to aka.ms/Power Apps Training. Let me actually put that. Actually, can you grab that URL for me? It's aka.ms Power Apps Training. And I'm gonna go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and go there now, and not save any.
Cutting in and out just a little bit. Okay, good. Your audio's back on.
Okay, good. And I'll actually try to speak really clearly. And all of these demos, actually, I've got the walkthroughs with the exception of the Power Automate one, which is actually still in preview, or it's pre-preview, is right here. And one of these is creating Power. One of these is actually putting those tiles in it and actually setting up alerts. They are in there. Luckily for me, I actually know which one it is, so I can actually go right there. .ms/PBI in Power Apps. So I actually made a link directly from that page. But if you have that page, you have it. And these are the steps using the dashboard in a day data set. And here is actually how you go out and set the filter context from these buttons to only look at a subset of the data. So with that, Reed, I want to thank you. We're 9 minutes over the hour, but I really appreciate you letting me join your channel.
Oh, yeah.
And if there's no other questions, I'm going to hand it back to you to close. Otherwise, if there's questions, feel free to shout them out.
Yeah. So for just people in the channel again, I have a couple of questions that I'll field to both myself and Chuck in a second. But if you have any others, you're welcome to drop it into here. I think actually there was one that was directly related to what you just were showing. So let me send this in. I think that was, he was talking about filter context or RLS. I'm not sure if that was applying to the demo because I was a bit multitasking with the chat thread. Does that make sense to you or no?
It does, yeah. Okay. So Whatabyte. Actually, David Mossman out of the UK. Thank you for joining us. I know we both know David. Okay, so.
That's why. Yeah, you're right. Yeah.
We showed it in a couple different places. So what I'm doing here in the last demo is I actually clicked on a button and I intentionally specified the filter context. So I'm actually using whatever is in the dashboard with my user identity is passing through. So I am automatically going to have the RLS filter context applied, and I can go out and intentionally apply additional context. So again, I want to say that one more time because I didn't do a very good job, is that I am accessing the dashboard data through my identity. that means RLS will get applied because I'm passing through my identity. It's not like we're actually using publish to web and
Yep.
using anonymous. I'm always passing in my filter context into there. Now, that's the last one, which is actually the tile in Power Apps. Now, the first demos I showed, which is actually the getting the data set handed to Power Apps from Power BI.
Hmm.
Power BI is only going to hand me the data with the filter contexts, and I'm going to use that word plural, filter contexts applied. So if my identity had RLS applied and I can only see one state, and I go out and put a slicer for one county, the Power App is only going to see the information from that county because the state's already applied as well. So the answer
Okay.
is yes and yes, but in different ways. I actually took myself off of screen sharing. So if you wanted to actually put your
Oh
logo back
yeah.
up, Reed. Um,
I do
so
appreciate that
yeah,
when you stop, it just basically freezes the last image that was sent through
yeah,
rather than going to a black screen. But it also means it's sometimes hard for me to realize when somebody stopped sharing the screen.
yes.
I have another good question from David, and right here, two-part to it. So a little off topic, but they, so yeah, I think you just asked that. Can role of security be embedded into a Power BI portal, and how does it work? And it can then, and also the title
Us,
can the title have
yeah,
RLS applied to it? But so, as you already mentioned, whenever you are fetching data from Power BI, it is using your Active Directory credentials. So you have to have access to that for the person consuming it, and the
yeah.
security is applied through it, right?
Portals I didn't demo. Portals are a
Okay.
different beast.
Okay.
And portals, when you go out and add a portal, I should actually have demoed that. But just like when we put a Power BI tile in a Canvas app, you can put it in a model-based app, or what David's asking about is a portal app. So I can actually put those tiles across the three different types of applications. So again, I don't shoot the messenger. We're trying to make it simpler, but there are different types of Power Apps applications. And lately, about 3 or 4 months ago, when you go into your portal app, your portal documentation, and you add a portal or a Power BI tile to a portal, you specify the type of access that you want. And publish to web is one. There's three, and the other two actually would actually adhere to RLS. The publish to web would not. So you have to specify when you actually apply your tile to your portal, how do you want the access to, and how you specify that would then dictate whether or not RLS actually is audited or not. Great question.
A couple of others. Well, less of a, yeah, I guess technically a question. And let me, oh, there you go, send it. He needs a t-shirt like that.
I'm not on the Power BI team anymore. You're gonna have to ask
Yep.
Kelly Kai or Sandy Rivas actually for the Power BI T-shirt. Sorry.
I do think that is one of the ones that just sold in the Microsoft, I guess, apparel store. I feel like I'm 80% sure that that's true.
I think Will Thompson left this one on the back of his desk and it wandered off somehow. I'm
I'll
pretty
tell
sure.
him when he comes on later this year that, oh, by the way, Chuck has your t-shirt.
Yeah, I don't think I bought it. I think I acquired it. So, anyways,
That's the
yeah,
same. Yeah,
Fernando.
same with mine. It was, yeah, obviously a gift from the MVP community. Speaking of those, as a digression, it was in the MVP Slack channel that I have with a bunch of us and other colleagues, and apparently some MVPs got a little MVP Lego figure. Like I didn't know those existed, but quite a few people have it's a tiny little Lego figurine of, I don't know if it's of them or a generic person, but they have MVP written with the MVP Microsoft logo in the middle of his chest, and I guess that was gifted to certain ones. So I'm trying to see if I can get a hold of one of those because those are super cool. I would love a mini Lego figurine of that.
I don't have one, but there you go.
Yeah, one of the
Fernando,
cooler that, yeah, go ahead.
I was going to say, Fernando, I saw you on the Power Apps community call 2 days ago. Thank you for joining us. That was nice of you to see you there. Fernando is often on the Vancouver user group, so I see Fernando on a regular basis.
And I got another question from Chase. What is the best way to update source with new inputs and later use that new source from Power BI? Hmm. It's somewhat of a vague question. What is the best way to update source Yeah, I'm not. Well, that's a consultant answer of like I can't give it an answer without enough information, and I'm not sure exactly what the context is of what you're trying to do. Other than I would say like you can use Power Query to certainly switch between sources like that, but yeah, I would need to know more about that specific scenario to really better understand what the result is that you're looking for.
Yeah, so I'm gonna say yes to what everything that Reed said, and take a look at Power BI parameters, because what you could do is when you
Hmm.
open up a report, you can go out and say what file or what state you want, and what you could do is actually go ahead and actually requery the report based on the input that they give. So
Yeah.
that's how I've done my Power BI reports is using parameters, and the first time they open it, you then actually ask the user what data actually should I be looking at, and that's actually a pretty common metaphor. Z, thank you for actually asking that. That's a great question.
I'm actually just going to
Uh,
throw a couple of appreciations that I saw up here. So, George's amazing capabilities. Let's see, there's another one here as well. And I had somebody tell me in here what the name was, and I completely just forgot. Can't find it. But yeah, uh, somebody posted the translation of this name, and I can't find it again. But either way, this person loved your presentation. I think I had another one for Nando also. This was excellent, thanks. So I like to just throw those up. I'll even give you a little bit of a cheers for the
yeah.
presentation as well. Um, Dennis, thank you. Yep. So yeah, the last one, this one, Dennis is the translation for that user. But yeah, everybody seems to really enjoy that. Oh God, here. Okay, Fernando,
Do you know where
this is a great
do you know,
one.
do you know where Dennis is coming from? The reason I said is one of my best trips I ever did was I actually spent some time in Russia with a dentist. It was with the MVPs. We went out and rode doom buggies with paint guns, and we actually had helium balloons in the back of the doom buggies, and we had to
Hmm.
actually pop them. There's no way OSHA or anybody that actually did liability insurance would let anything like that in the U.S. Best time of my entire life, and it was with a dentist in Russia. So I don't know if
That is
same person
Dennis,
or
and
not.
he says he's from Russia.
So maybe if you
That
had a crazy weekend riding doom buggies, shooting paintball guns at each other, there you go.
I love this
No,
comment. Here's where we're never stop learning girls and boys club ruling the world for great content. By the way, the elbow cough is translated because this apparently does not bring through emojis, but the emoji is the dab. So apparently the text I didn't realize the text description for the emoji icon is just called elbow cough. Yeah, and one more from Lisa Brown. Thank you for the session as well. So yeah, people were really digging it. I think our peak was about 44 that I saw tuning in at any one point. So good solid number brought in. I know a few people at the very beginning even mentioned that it was yeah, Donald Parrish. He used to see your stuff years ago, back when as he was describing, back when you did click.
not
Used to
enough
do
framework.
off and used to do the Office videos way back in the day, I guess.
Yeah, yeah. I, yeah, I had a lot of interaction with Donald. Nice seeing you, Donald. Thank you for joining.
Sure,
Okay,
yep.
with that, Reed, I am going to go out and jump in the pool. It's now 80 degrees here, so enjoy the sun.
Absolutely, Chuck. It
Thank
was
you very
great
much.
having you on. And then everybody, thanks for tuning in, and I will see you on our next live stream. Thank you so much for watching. Please consider hitting that like and subscribe button. And if you want to help support this channel, take a look at our channel memberships as well. And last but not least, please consider sharing this video on social media to help pass on this awesome content and to help the channel grow. So until next time.